Hare Krishna. Before we start and before I even introduce my topic to you all, let us just invoke the auspiciousness and invoke the blessings from the higher sources. So I'll just take your maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Om Ajnanatirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. ये बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट है जो मैंने अभी कहा, ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानंजन शलाकया। क्यों? क्योंकि हम लोग जो है ये भौतिक जगत में वी हैव बॉर्न इनटू द एज ऑफ डार्कनेस। सो अगर हमें इससे बाहर निकलना है तो वी रियली रिक्वायर्ड द हायर पावर्स एंड स्पेसिफिकली द मर्सी ऑफ द स्पिरिचुअल मास्टर हु कैन ओपन आवर आईज ऑफ नॉलेज. So today we'll discuss about a medicine which can cure the most deadly disease. Now you may be wondering, my God, there are so many diseases in this world and now there is another one coming. Well, that's true, and I'm sure it's not coming, it's been there forever. But now I'll explain you what that disease is all about, and probably you'll be surprised that what it can do to you. So this particular medicine that we're going to discuss today will cure your disease, which is the most deadliest disease. It does not leave you even you die. So can you imagine how important to have this particular medicine which can cure your disease, which is not going to leave you even after your death? Well, I'm talking about a medicine to a disease called Bhavrog. I'm not going to give you the disease, the medicine for the AIDS or a cancer or of that sort, but I'm going to give you a medicine which can relieve you from the Bhavrog. What is that Bhavrog? Bhavrog is nothing but Punarapi Jananam Punarapi Maranam. That means we are taking birth again and again in this material world and going through so many species. And it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 8.4 million species of life that we go through, right? So now you may be wondering, okay, we talked about the disease, but what is the cure? What is the medicine for this, right? So the medicine for this is nothing but hearing the transcendental sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let me just give you the synopsis or the story of Srimad Bhagavatam in essence, which can cure the biggest disease that we have of Bhavrog. So as you all know that how this Srimad Bhagavatam came into existence is when Parikshit Maharaj was thirsty and he put a snake around the sage's neck, and then he was cursed to die in 7 days. And then he was looking for a purpose of life, that what do I do in these 7 days? That's where he gave up everything and wandered around the bank of the Ganges, and that's where he meets Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and that is where the whole Bhagavatam begins. But I'm going to go even a little further to that, is what is the Mahatmya? What is the essence of hearing this Bhagavatam? What does it do to you? So let me tell you a story which can help you understand the importance of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. How does it cure the biggest disease, as we talked earlier, the Bhavrog? So the story goes like this, and I'm sure that everybody loves to hear the story, and that helps them understand in a very easy way rather than getting complicated, right? So in this story, there was a Brahman, long ago, there was a Brahman named Atmadev. And he had a very chaste wife called Dunduli. These Atmadev and Dunduli, they were happily living in their home. Everything was nice, as usual in everybody's house, right? Everybody is happy. But there is always a but, right? So that but is they did not have a child. And Atmadev was very, very disappointed, very unhappy that they have everything but they did not have a child. But on the contrary, the Dunduli was not that much affected of not having a child, and she was living her life normal and she was not so much bothered. But Atmadev was like a fish out of water. He couldn't bear that not having a child. So he used to go to all kinds of places to figure out how he can have a child. As nowadays we have a lot of IVF centers and lot many things, right? Where people try to find a child through so many different processes. We have surrogate mothers and whatnot. But probably in those days, those facilities may not be there. So what he was doing, he was trying to go to the different places and trying to meet with the exalted sadhus and try to learn from them, is there a way I can have a child? So once he went to a jungle and he was looking out for a sage who can help him in this regard. And he bumped into one sage, and that sage said, just looking at him, he said, you look very disturbed. Is there any way I can help you? So Atmadev was very glad to hear those things, and he said, yes, Sadhu Maharaj, I am bereft of a child. If you can help me with that, that will be great. So just looking at that, because that sage was so powerful, just looking at Atmadev, he could see the 7 lifetimes ahead of him. So he told Atmadev that, my dear friend, your destiny says that you will not have a child for next 7 lifetimes. By hearing those words, Atmadev was very broken hearted. He pleaded to the sage that, oh my dear sage, please do something. There must be some way to get a child. Without a child, my life is so unfortunate. So can you just help me with this, please? So looking at the eagerness and the desperation in the eyes of Atmadev, the sage became compassionate. And he said, looks like you are so desperate and so eager to have a child, even though it is not in your destiny, but you are so insisting. So let me give you this fruit. Make sure that your wife eats this fruit and she will bear the child. So Atmadev, when he heard this from this sage, he became so happy. He took this fruit and he literally ran to his home and shared the same thing with his wife, and telling her the whole story, what exactly happened in the jungle and how he met with this particular sage. And he thought that his wife will be equally excited to hear this. But to his utter surprise, his wife was not so much interested in this. So somehow or other, Atmadev said, see Dunduli, without a child, I don't think so we can ever achieve the greatest happiness that we can ever receive in this world. So please cooperate and let's have a child. After a long time, I have met this sage, and this sage was so merciful to us, and he has awarded this fruit to us. So after this convincing arguments that Atmadev puts forward with Dunduli, Dunduli accepts this proposal and says, okay, but I have one condition. So Atmadev says, okay, what is your condition? I'll take all your conditions because I want to have a child. So she says, I will eat this fruit, I will bear the child, but I want you to go on pilgrimage for all these 9 months of my pregnancy, so that I will do as I like. And I don't want any interference from you. So he was a very obedient husband and agreed to this proposal, and he says, okay, I will depart for a pilgrimage and I will pray for you so that we can have a best of a child. After this, Atmadev departed to holy pilgrimages, and looking at that fruit, Dhunduli was wondering, do I really need to do this? Because she was very much afraid of the labor pain, that she knew that what it means to hold a child for 9 months in the womb, and at the end of the 9 months to go through that delivery pain, to go through that labor pain. So she was very hesitant and she was wondering, what do I do? Isn't it? You must be wondering, like, this is a story of Srimad Bhagavatam which must have happened so many thousand years back. But this seems to be the story of the current affairs, right? Where the women of today's age are hesitant to have a child. They're talking about forget about the child, they don't want to even have a marriages. They're talking about the live-in relationships. They're talking about having either only of one child or a no child. It says, the education is so costly, there are so many other things will get involved. Who wants to do all these things? I want to have my own life. I want to live the way I want. Because once I have a child, then my whole focus will change towards the child. So Dhunduli was of also the same opinion. So Dhunduli was wondering, what do I do? What do I do? And when I have noticed in my life also, whenever you are so eager and so desperate to find a solution for your problems, somehow or other you find a solution. And here comes the solution. Well, what's the solution? While she was just sitting in her home, her sister visits her. And when her sister visits her, she finds her little abnormal. So she asks, what's going on? Like, you doesn't seem to be healthy. He says, I'm expecting. Oh, okay. So here comes my solution. Because she has not eaten that fruit yet. And she explained her duvida, her predicament to her sister, that what do? I don't want to go through this labor pain. I don't want to hold a child for 9 months in my womb. Can you suggest a solution? So the sisters are alike. So sister said, okay, I have a solution for you. See, my husband is very greedy for money. So anyways, I am expecting, and at the end of the 9 month, I'll deliver a child. So what I'll do, I will give you my child to you. And then you can have this child as your own child. And don't tell your husband that, you did not eat the fruit and this is something you got a child from me. You don't have to tell all these things. So another thing is the lying, right? So that we see nowadays, it's so easy to lie, so easy, right? But here also the same situation. Now Dhunduli takes that fruit and gives out to a cow on the instruction of her own sister. Now you may wonder, why did they give that fruit to a cow? So both were doubting whether this fruit is actually going to produce a child or not. And that is what the current scenario as well. Everyone is doubting whether this going and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is actually beneficial, whether doing our festivals does make sense. Nowadays there is a lot of propaganda, right? Whatever we have been doing, whether it makes sense or not. But we have to have that faith. In the 15th century, the people were believing that the earth is flat. Not in India. Please make a note. Not in India, in the Western countries. Because we had a full faith that the earth is round. And that's why we call earth a bhugol. What that bhugol means? Bhu means earth and gol means round. The earth is round. But in the Western countries, they did not have this Vedic wisdom. So they were wondering that the earth is flat. And if you go to one point, probably you will end up into a ditch, right? So, but what happened after that they realized and they figured out with all these scientific inventions that, my God, this earth is round. But do we have to do all this scientific invention and investments of millions of dollars to figure out that the earth is round? No, because we had this Vedic wisdom which tells us this earth is round. What is another example that I can give you is about a cow dung. People were thinking that the cow dung is dirty, right? We can't touch the cow dung. But after all the scientific inventions and investments, they are realizing that the cow dung has an antiseptic property. It is completely pure. Each and every ingredient in the cow dung is pure. And that is why in our houses, if you have gone to the villages, you have noticed that we put that cow dung lipan on the walls as well as on the floor, right? Because it has antiseptic property. It has lot of positive vibrations, and that is where you see in those houses they were very much with more of goodness. But we want science to prove it. Well, that is something this Dunduli and her sister wants to do that. They want to experiment on a cow, whether this fruit can deliver a child or not. So my dear friends, it's very, very important that we throw away this mentality of doubting each and everything. You cannot lead your life on a base of doubts. We had this 9/11, right? After that, many people were doubting whether the plane that we're going to take will be hijacked, will be crashed, right? So will you stop flying? No. You have that inherent faith that I will be safe, right? And that's how you lead your life. Otherwise, you cannot even step out of your home. There are so many car accidents, right? Does that mean that you will stop walking on the road? No. So we also have to have that inherent faith that the Srimad Bhagavatam cures this Bhavrog. So now let's take this story forward. So Dunduli gave that fruit to a cow and made a deal with her sister that I will give you so much money, you give me your child. So I don't have to go through the labor pain. Now here comes the 9 months, and then the Atmadev was about to return. Her sister delivers the child, and here, to a great surprise, the experiment, the scientific experiment that Dunduli and her sister performed on a cow was successful, and the cow delivered a boy, a beautiful boy, a human boy. I'm not talking about a calf. It's a human boy that a cow delivered. But there was one surprise to them. That boy had strange ears. The ears were of the cows. So they decided that we will name this boy a Gokarna, because the ears were look like a cow's ears. Now, to a great surprise, as you know, the cow's ears are the ears which always hears the good things, and they don't want to accept any bad things. So like that, they decided to name the boy which was born through a cow as Gokarna. Now they had another boy which came through so-called Dunduli, as that was the belief of Atmadev, right? So they were deciding that what name we should give. So Atmadev was thinking that we should give a boy a name which has some meaning, right? That is why I'm sure whenever anybody is getting a child, the first thing that they go is what? Earlier what they used to do? They used to go to the Panditji, right? And probably the aunt, we call it Fufi, right? She is the one who is supposed to give a name. But nowadays even that culture is also deteriorating, and the husband and a wife or the parents wants to take a full responsibility, saying that we will give name to our child, not anyone else. But they find themselves also short of the knowledge. So what would they do? Rather than taking the help of any Pandit or taking the help of their Fufi, they take the help of a Google, right? They go on the Google, type in what are the best names that they can find. And nowadays there are some fashions of like, give a name, something that people cannot understand, right? Or sometimes they have a nice name they give as Siddharth and other things, but unfortunately when they go abroad, the Siddharth becomes Sid and all kinds of things, right? So ultimately the names are for the namesake, right? But these two, Dunduli and Atmadev, wanted to give a name which is very meaningful. So Atmadev was very insisting, but Dunduli said no. My child name should have my name in it. So sure enough, again the Atmadev submits himself to his wife's suggestion and says, okay, so what name you want to give to this boy? And then she says, we want to give our child a name Dhundukari. So father says, okay, let's give the name Dhundukari. So now after giving this name, both the boys were growing up together, Gokarna and Dhundukari. But to their great surprise, they always found Gokarna behaving so nicely and doing things so wonderfully. But this Dhundukari was always harassing other children, creating ruckus, creating all kinds of disturbances in the home. And they were wondering, what kind of child is this? And slowly but surely, the child was growing up, and they came to the age of almost getting married. By this time, Atmadev was becoming old, and this Dhundukari had developed all kinds of wonderful habits: gambling, meat eating, intoxication, prostitution, you name it, and this person had it, right? And that is the problem. So because of all these bad habits that we see, he started exploiting all the money that Atmadev had. And then finally, Atmadev decided that it's becoming too much. But when he decided it's too much, it was too late also. Because Dhundukari started beating his own father, beating his own mother, and asking money every now and then. So then, the father, Atmadev, goes to Gokarna and explains the situation, that what do I do? So, sure enough, the Gokarna had only one solution, that my father, only one solution I can give you is go to the forest, dedicate your life of seclusion and meditate on the holy names of Lord Shri Krishna and read Srimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis. And Atmadev adhered to the instructions given by his own son Gokarna and goes to the forest and dedicate his life in the service of Lord Shri Krishna. But here the mother still remains at home because she cannot go out because of her upbringing and because of her samskaras. She was not able to take up to the devotional service. So she remained at home, and one fine day she committed suicide because she was so tortured by her own son. And that is the problem. That you think that your sons will give you happiness just by giving them the things, but that's our misconception. We have to spend our time in giving them the samskaras, not the things. Because things will not last forever, but the samskaras which can last forever. So my humble request to all the parents, and I am also trying my best to give the best sanskaras to our children, and that is what give them the future. Now, Dhundukari, being in all the bad habits, he ran out of all the money. And he was hosting 5 prostitutes in his own home. And now, they were supporting him as long as he had money. And now he was bereft of the money. So these 5 prostitutes made a plan and they killed Dhundukari. Because Dhundukari was involved into so many things and did so much vices and so bad things that he did in his life, and he was full of unfulfilled desires, he became a ghost of a Brahma Rakshas type. And when he became a ghost, he started haunting so many people. So one fine day, Gokarna was just sitting at the doorstep. He heard a strange sound, and he figured that because of his piety and because of his devotional service, he could figure out that this ghost is none other than his own brother Dhundhukari, and he could have a conversation with him. And Dhundhukari said, "Can you help me get out of this ghostly body?" And then finally he prays to the sun god, and the sun god directs him to recite Srimad Bhagavatam, which can relieve Dhundhukari from his ghostly body. So he decides to do a Bhagavad Saptah by himself. He invites all the villagers, and Gokarna starts reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. And before he starts reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, he installs Dhundhukari into the bamboos that were nearby. And this bamboo had 7 knots in this bamboo. So at the bottom, he installs Dhundhukari, the ghost, the Brahma Rakshas, in these bamboo shoots. And then he starts reciting Srimad Bhagavatam one after another. So as it was going on for 7 days, at each day, this one of the knot was bursting, and that was showing that Dhundhukari was progressing from bottom of the bamboo to the one knot after another. And at the end of the 7 days, the bamboo shoots of the 7 knot was also bursted, and suddenly they saw, for their great surprise, a Vaikuntha Vimana. A Vaikuntha Vimana came, and the Vishnu Dutas came to personally escort Dhundhukari and gave him the residence in Vaikuntha Loka. And looking at this, all these assembled citizens of that particular village, they were surprised and they were questioning that we did also listen to the same Srimad Bhagavatam. Then why only Dhundhukari become the beneficiary of this listening to Srimad Bhagavatam? Even this Gokarna has recited the Srimad Bhagavatam, then why not him also become the beneficiary of hearing this Srimad Bhagavatam? So Vishnuduta explained that the attention and the desperation that Dhundhukari had, none of you had. So what destination Dhundhukari attained is because of his attention to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and the sincerity and the dedication that he showed in all these 7 days. So that made everybody pacified. Yes, that is what is requirement to hear Srimad Bhagavatam or to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. And then again they requested Gokarna to arrange for a Bhagavad Saptah, and this time all the assembled people were equally attentive and eager to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. And sure enough, at the end of the 7th day, the Vimana from Vaikuntha Loka came, and all were accommodated into that plane. So my dear friends, what I want to conclude with is, can you imagine that if this Srimad Bhagavatam can relieve the Brahma Rakshas from this Bhavrog, then what to speak of us? We are still into this human body. We can still have this eagerness and that sincerity to read Srimad Bhagavatam and to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's take this opportunity of this human birth and perfect our life by regularly taking the dose as doctor prescribes you. 1 pill in the morning and 1 pill in the evening. So like that, if you can do that, in the morning if you can recite Srimad Bhagavatam for some time and do the same thing in the evening, we guarantee you that you will be crossing over or completely overcoming your disease of Bhavrog. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.